night, the Board of Education adopted the budget officially. It's the one that will go to voters on April 21st. And then, of course, parallel to that, the Board of Education is putting forward a referendum, also on April 21st. So I will, speak to that and answer any questions that you have. So first off, I'll just say that as our finance chair, Matt Gilfillan, put it, the goal with the budget this year was to keep the lights on. So what he means by that, or meant by that when he said it, is that knowing that we were going to move forward with a referendum to address as many capital needs as we could, the board wanted to craft a budget that came in as low as possible to maintain all of our current district programs. There's no significant additional program included in this year's budget. We always talk about where Chatham lies in relation to other school districts. This is just a stat that takes some data from the Department of Education. The first column is the per pupil budgetary cost in 2012-13, the most recent year for which data is available. And these are some of our sister school districts. And you can see that on a per pupil budgetary basis, these are costs associated with classroom instruction and the educational delivery in a school district. We spend less than every one of our peers. And at the same time, we have a very high percentage of students who opt to take an AP test by the time they graduate. And we have the highest percentage on this list of students who are still enrolled in some kind of college or university study 16 months after they graduate from Chatham High School. So we fare very well in terms of student outcomes, but we are delivering the services at a cost that, relatively speaking, is less than most of our neighbors. This is Morris County, just the per pupil budgetary cost. This is every K through 12 school district in Morris County, every single one of them. So you can see in a part of the state where the cost of living is a little bit higher, we still are the lowest on the list outside of Dover. So this is to say that there's good value in Chatham. This year, in terms of our budget, we are getting the same exact amount of state aid as we received last year. We also qualify for raising an additional amount beyond the 2% tax levy cap of $183,000. The state grants that based on certain parameters, such as enrollment growth. In our case, this has to do with health insurance costs, that the state health insurance plan is rising a certain amount, and so then we get a credit, if you will. Our board could exercise that as taxing authority. So the maximum tax levy increase the board could propose would be a 2.3% levy increase. To put that in perspective, last year the tax levy increase was 3.34%, and the year before it was 3.46%. In both of those years, the Board of Education asked a second question, and in both of those years the voters approved the second question, and that is why the tax levy increase was up above 3. So what's included in this year's budget, as I said, was everything to maintain our current programs, as well as some restroom upgrades where we qualify for state funding at Chatham High School, and then something we've been working on for a couple of years is approval for improved parking at Washington Avenue School. And every year now for the past 3, 4, 5 years, we've been trying to bolster our special education programming in the district so that we can retain more students in district, keep those costs down, and keep students here near their peers and their neighbors and not have to send them out of district. So the budget includes those 3 items. Sorry about that. So this is a slide of expenditures included in the current budget. I know that this is a little bit small. It'll be available on our website. But you can just see in the final column the percent change year over year, and a lot of those numbers are coming in right around 2%, some below, some above, and then there are some wider swings when we get into capital outlay and so forth towards the bottom of the screen. So in looking at those expenditures that I just moved through kind of quickly, the goal of the Finance Committee and the Board of Ed, what we have this year is a 1.77% tax levy increase. It's almost half of what the tax levy increase was last year. And we believe this is a responsible budget. It will ensure that we're doing what we have to do for students, but it does not, as I mentioned before, expand any program like we did last year. Again, to kind of put that in perspective, last year in the township, the 3.34% translated into about a $48 increase in property taxes per $100,000 of assessed value. So this year that 48 will drop down to about 28. And in the borough, you can see a similar drop from about $26 to 15. And on a house assessed at $700,000, you can also see the difference between the tax levy increase this year compared to the last 2 years. Again, for as long as I can find data going back, this is the lowest tax levy increase that the Board of Education has proposed. Significantly less than every other year, at least a dozen years going back now. And it is about 40% less than last year's tax levy impact per $100,000. Okay, so having said all of that, in terms of next year, this will position the board to have a little bit more flexibility, potentially, at least in terms of its taxing authority, because the way the state law works is that for every dollar you propose below 2%, you can tap that money or that amount the following year, the following 3 years actually, as something called banked cap. So because the district didn't go up to the 2.3% maximum allowable levy, that dollar amount will be available for taxing authority next school year. Not to say the board will necessarily use it, but it'll be available. And so now we've passed March 9th, here we are on March 10th. We have a public budget hearing where the board just simply adopts this formally, and that's the 23rd. And at that point, it's in the voters' hands for April 21st. There have been many capital needs in the district for a long time, for as long as I can remember. And there have been many iterations of possible ways to address our capital needs. Just to give you an idea, the district was formed in 1988. About every 6 years, there was a referendum put forward by a Board of Education. That's because our enrollment growth has been explosive over that time. So we've almost doubled our enrollment in the district since the district was formed. We've gone up about 91%. And the enrollment growth, even though demographers predict it'll plateau or it'll level off or it'll begin to decrease, it hasn't happened. And as a result of that, boards of education have had to go out to the voters on occasion and seek more money for capital improvements. And typically, the boards have addressed, first and foremost, classrooms and added classrooms onto every school in the district to make sure that there were spaces to teach kids. Second, all of our library and media centers have been updated and modernized. And third, boards have added on gymnasiums. So this space, if I recall, was added in the early 1990s. In 2005, there were gymnasiums put on Chatham Middle School and Washington Avenue School. And right next to the gymnasiums, we've got additional athletic facilities or improved athletic facilities, Cougar Field and Haas. So the district has had to seek capital improvements on occasion because it runs a lean budget, and on a per pupil basis, it's spending very efficiently in terms of delivering an educational product. At the current time, we've drained out our capital reserve account in order to add on to the high school to make sure that the students in grades 3 through 8, roughly, have enough space in the district. And at the current time, of course, we think that we can't really handle some of the major capital improvements that we need to address through our operating budget or capital reserve account. In addition to that, so in addition to just the capital needs that we've been looking at and that we think we need to address, there's an opportunity right now because of some other factors. So we're losing some of our debt from the referendum that was approved in 1995, primarily to expand Lafayette Avenue School. We just are in finishing up a refinancing or refunding of current debt from previous referendum that will save about $3.8 million over the current bond that we're refunding. And then the biggest single factor probably right now in terms of timing is that interest rates are very, very low. And I'll show a slide in a couple of minutes that'll kind of illustrate that difference. So, what are the projects that we are seeking to address? Number one, the high school auditorium. If you happen to be at the CHS musical this weekend, you probably took note, especially since there's a lot of talk about the referendum. The auditorium is not in very good condition. It was built in 1976. Aside from the code issues and ADA compliancy and so forth, there are only about 700 seats in the auditorium. We have about 1,200 students in the high school. Everything in the auditorium is original, from the seats to the carpet to the roof to everything else. And we need to invest in the auditorium. It's outdated and outmoded. We can't increase the size of that auditorium in a way that is cost-effective or not disruptive to both Lafayette Avenue School and Chatham High School. And there are reasons for that. There's poured concrete in the foundation, which makes it impossible to drill down. The roof is connected to both buildings, Lafayette and the high school, so we can't just rip the roof off and build up. And we can't kind of build out any place because we have fully developed property around the whole facility. So therefore, we can't just simply build a new auditorium on the high school property, at least not without taking away something else that we believe we need, or disrupting the high school, and we don't have any place to put students if we have to take out 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 classrooms for construction. So, at the middle school we have a similar story, and I don't have a slide specifically about the middle school auditorium, but I can repeat everything I just said. The middle school auditorium was built in 1958. There's never been an air conditioning unit at Chatham Middle School Auditorium, which is one of the reasons we can't use it in June for things like 8th grade ceremonies and graduation. The middle school auditorium is just as outdated, just as outmoded. There's asbestos tile on the floor that needs to be remediated. So we have to address the Chatham Middle School Auditorium. So in looking at the middle school and the high school with our architects, we've come to the conclusion that it's not a cost-effective and not a great solution to just try to enlarge or redo the space at the middle school or the high school. It would be better for us, it would give us more value, more flexibility in the future, address some of the needs that you see on the screen relating to seating capacity, storage capacity, construction space, and so forth if we built a new auditorium. And on top of that, on top of just the benefits of building new and being able to address some of the needs that we have, we also then can use the current auditorium space in another way that we think also lends a lot of value to the district. And so in terms of the auditorium space, how we would use it, first thing we would do is we would address this imbalance here that you see on the screen. So as you all know, and hopefully your kids are having a good experience in the design and technology class that they get once a week this year as a result of the second question from last year. But we have tech lab or design and technology spaces in all of the buildings in the district. And you can see, if you take a look, CHS actually is about to bring a 6th one on from the construction that we're completing. So the CHS ratio is going to go down to represent a broadening of our program. Chatham Middle School has one tech lab for its 1,000 students. So we want to take that one and make it 4 through this referendum, and we'll do that by building STEM lab space in the current auditorium. On top of that, we'll move the district offices from their current location in the Chatham Township Municipal Building, and we'll save operating costs by integrating Pete's office and my office and the rest into a district facility. So just as an example there, that bottom bullet, right now every school in the district has fiber optic network that takes us out to the internet and enables us to do what we need to do. Being out in the township, we don't have access to that network, so we have to pay for internet and phone costs. many thousands of dollars every year. That goes away if we're in a district facility down at the middle school. And there are other benefits too. In addition, converting the middle school into STEM labs and integrating the board offices, all of that has been approved by the state for state funding, basically, or at least offset in debt relief. So the state would pick up roughly 40% of that project, which makes it even more appetizing for us. So the total cost of that project would drop from $3.4 million to $2.1, and then we would have savings in operating costs every year. In addition to that, we want to have more space at all of our elementary schools, including Southern. This proposal originally entertained an expansion of all three buildings. The board, after getting public feedback, narrowed the scope of the project a little bit. So we would build 4 classrooms over at Milton, 2 at Washington, and then what we would do is relocate 2 programs here, possibly special ed programs, or we might relocate something at Washington, like one of our pre-K programs, over to Milton. But we would rearrange some of the programming in the district so that every building had a net gain of 2 classrooms. That's the goal here. So 6 classrooms across the district, 2 new classrooms, or 2 available classrooms for each school building. We'd also upgrade Cougar Field. That's another place that the district acquired that property in the 1970s. Everything there is original except for the turf. So the parking is a mess, as you probably know. The bleachers are old. They're out of compliance with every current regulation you can find. So we would give that an upgrade, and we'd also create some kind of walking and running path around the perimeter. And then lastly, we would look to turf the high school fields. Our spring sports season started last Friday, actually, and none of our teams, of course, can get on any field in the district. And that wouldn't change. Obviously, we still have snow, but the benefit of turf is that as soon as the snow melts, you can get on the turf. At the high school field right now, our baseball teams are not going to be able to get on their field for at least another probably 2-3 weeks because once the snow melts, it's nothing but mud. Back to the interest rates. So this is just a snapshot of what the district did in 2005 versus what we're proposing to do now. And if you look at the projects, they're actually very similar if you swap out gymnasiums for auditoriums. So you've got classrooms in various buildings, you've got improvements at Cougar Field, you've got additional turf work, and then 2 auditoriums instead of 2 gymnasiums. The total amount for each referendum is also in the similar. 24.8 for the one that I've been talking about, 26.7 for the one in 2005. And then if you can see what the tax impact was per $100,000 of assessed value. In the borough in 2005 it was 71, and in the township it was 57. And we project this year's tax impact to be about 25. So the low interest rate environment makes it much, much more attractive to go out and address capital needs now. And if we wait, our fear is that the interest rates will begin to rise, and then the gap between what it cost in 2005 and what it will cost this year is going to close. And that's something that our board wants to avoid, and that's one of the reasons why the referendum is moving forward now. Back when I was talking about the budget and mentioned that last year's tax impact per $100,000 in the township was $48, roughly $48. The tax impact then would be about 25. So you can see the impact of the referendum will be roughly half of what the tax levy increase was for the township a year ago, just with the budget. So again, it just speaks to the fact, and our board members have spoken about this a lot, that the timing and the low interest rate environment makes this less impactful than it otherwise ever would be to take on this kind of capital improvement plan. All right, so let me just hit some very specific questions that come up every now and again. This is a dead issue now. The Board of Education voted unanimously last night to keep the referendum as one question that will go to all voters. The reason, in part, that they did that is that they believe that this referendum represents a comprehensive improvement that touches every part of the educational program, arts, athletics, academics, and they didn't want to prioritize or place more value on one element of the program more than any other. Another reason is that some of these projects are really interdependent and they have been developed assuming that the others would take place too. But that, like I said, is a dead issue at this point. There are questions about operating costs. It does cost money to open up a new building. We've worked with our architect and engineers, and we believe the cost of operating the new auditorium in terms of heating it, cooling it, putting lights on, so on and so forth, would be about $20,000. And we would probably add a half-time custodian to help us in that regard. So we're looking at somewhere around $40,000. But as I mentioned before, we will save probably twice that amount, at least, just by moving from the township down to the middle school. So operating costs are positive for us, we think. Some folks have wondered, can we just add lots of teachers and have more programs available for kids? We can't really do that. Programs are added to a budget via the operating budget or a second question like we did last year. Capital improvements, on the other hand, in this case with this referendum, are financed. So as a result, you kind of get a little bit more bang for your buck in terms of the tax impact. So just for a comparison's sake, last year, April 2014, 1 year ago, when I was talking about the second question, that second question was for $460,000. The $460,000 ended up turning into an $8 increase per $100,000 of assessed value on people's taxes. This year, $460,000 last year. This year we're talking about $25 million. The $25 million will result in $25 impact per assessed, $100,000 of assessed value. So, and it's paid off in 20 years. So the impact is just much, much, much less compared to adding programs tied to staffing and other costs. As I mentioned, we could do a cheaper proposal, and we can just give a facelift, or we can just renovate the current auditoriums at a lower price point. Doing that, though, doesn't address some of those other issues that we have around safety and set construction, about the storage constraints that we have in both buildings. And so the more you try to address some of those concerns, the more the price goes up for just a renovation, and we don't think that it gives us the same value. On top of that, if we just renovated the middle school auditorium, then we don't have the conversion of the current auditorium into the STEM spaces and the office spaces. Yeah, Melissa. And the thinking on the part of the board has been that if we're going to go out for a referendum and address needs, especially as some of you pointed out to me, when other districts in the state this year have gone out for $60 and $45 million referendums, we should address needs in a way that is going to situate us well down the road, and not just do the bare minimum, to get by, especially when interest rates are low enough that the difference in cost between doing it really the way we want, in a way that's going to be great for our kids for the long term, that cost is not so different than doing it just well enough to make improvements and get by. The auditorium has not been designed yet. That happens, the architectural fees for that kick in after the referendum is approved, if it is approved. But the goal, of course, is to keep aesthetics in mind as well as function, and make this an enhancement, make the current site at the middle school look better than it does now. Every kind of construction you do is disruptive. I mean, we can repair the potholes in the front of Southern Boulevard School this afternoon. It's disruptive. No matter what you do, it's disruptive because it will change some kind of pattern or a process that you have in place. This, though, is a less disruptive option for us. It's the least disruptive option, short of building something and acquiring property down the road someplace and building there. It's least disruptive because we don't have to decommission any classrooms while we build. We can stage the construction at the middle school to that center island. We may have to divert traffic sometimes, but for the most part, it will not impact students as they're learning on a daily basis. So if the referendum fails, needless to say, none of this is going to happen right now. It would be up to the board to look and evaluate which of these projects are of the highest priority, which ones possibly could be put and packaged in a different referendum next year or the year after, or whenever the board decides. So we're hoping we don't get to this point, but if April 22nd comes and this fails, then the board will have to huddle up and determine what is the most appropriate way forward. In the past, we've only had one other referendum fail in the district, and what happened in that case was that the very next year, the board came back with a scaled-down version of the referendum from 39 million to about 25, and that referendum passed. Now, some of what got scrapped out of that referendum is the reason why we have been building at the high school for the last 5 years. There was another wing at the high school that basically was what we just did after the fact. So the board would have to determine how to proceed.